coalition to end broken windows was born out of exactly that. The phenomenon of broken windows policing taking place in the city of New York since the Giuliani administration in the 90s, backed by a very small article and unfounded theory of policing, which has essentially taken over the policing practice in the city of New York. So grassroots activists that operate without funding and without cosign from the city of New York work in collaboration to battle against broken windows policing. Broken windows policing is something that impacts us very negatively, and we decided to put some personal sacrifice in and form a coalition that works together to put a stop to broken windows. So the coalition consists of many, many grassroots groups that you may have heard of before, one of which is very integral in the Sunset Park community, which is El Grito de Sunset Park, which sponsored the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which was very fabulous just a few weeks ago. Also the group that I am the co-founder of, Bronxites for NYPD Accountability, we're also known as Y Accountability. New Yorkers Against Bratton, which spells it out in of itself. The legacy that Eric Garner left behind. Police Reform Organizing Project, which is PROP, and many, many other groups that collaborate together to make sure that we put this issue in the forefront and we push against and resist any policing policy that negatively impacts our communities on the basis of our race and our ethnicity and our culture. Hopefully everybody has that in order. Before we continue on, I can hear a lot going on in the background, so again, we're gonna please ask for respect. If you are an elected official, 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 we would ask that you just as well take a seat as we are asking the community to do the same thing. You can politic in a little while. Okay, this event is for the community, and we need everyone to quiet down and be respectful to one another. Are we all right with that, family? One more time, are we all right with that, family? Because this is the first time you have an event pulled together by the community. You don't see any dogs, you don't see any ponies. This is not a dog and pony show orchestrated by the city of New York. So we're going to hold this in respect and make it productive, and we're going to continue to pass this mic along to Josemar Trujillo. He is the co-founder of New Yorkers Against Bratton, which says it all in of itself, and he's going to talk to you guys about broken windows and what it means for us. Thank you.
Good evening, Sunset Park. Again, if I could just ask everybody to just quiet down. The acoustics in here are not the best, so we need everybody to be as quiet as possible, as respectful as possible. I want to also just announce we have translation services. If you arrived late, we have earpiece devices. Some of our people over here can set you up with one if you need Spanish translation. The devices are over there. Other than that, I wanted to thank everybody. Oh, saying in Spanish, of course. Tenemos aparatos para traducir en español, si necesitas traducimiento. En esa mesa ahí puedes recibir un pedacito para ir en tu oído para puedes escuchar en español. Okay. So I just wanted to say a few words, say thank you to everybody who come out. The reason that we formed the coalition around broken windows a few years ago was not just because of what happened with Eric Garner in Staten Island, but it was because of the thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands of interactions that mostly New Yorkers of color face with police officers in this city and beyond for decades. A lot of this you see in your daily life. The MTA, which everybody right now has understood that there's a problem with. long before there were subway delays, stories every day, there were young people, homeless people, poor people who were being arrested for fare beating, for jumping the turnstile. It is the #1 broken windows arrest in New York City. It is one also that we know can put documented and undocumented immigrants at risk of deportation. But there are other offenses as well. Riding a bike on a sidewalk. A few years ago, the Daily News came out and showed in Park Slope there were maybe like 30 summonses for riding the bike on the sidewalk, or 40, or a very low number. But in neighborhoods like Brownsville, the numbers were 2,000 or 2,500. The disparity from neighborhood to neighborhood, from white neighborhoods to working class neighborhoods of color, has been obvious for a long time. There's a lot of studies being done. We don't need more studies. We know what broken windows has meant to New Yorkers for the last 20, 25 years. And we also know that it doesn't work because the city's own Department of Investigation put a study that said it doesn't actually have an impact on serious felony crimes. We know that it is the talk of the town not only in New York City, but in other cities like Los Angeles and Baltimore. They may call it broken windows, they may call it quality of life, but these are the types of things that create that tension between residents and police, and it also creates a constant sending of people into criminal court. As the coalition, we do not only advocate for the end or the reduction of arrests for quality of life, but we also don't want summonses to be the answer as well. Because to hit somebody with a $100 or $150 ticket for hopping the turnstile for $275, or for barbecuing in the park, which I've seen in my neighborhood in Spanish Harlem, or for immigrant delivery bike workers who are now being stopped because the city is now cracking down on bicycles. These low-level crackdowns do not make us safer, and in fact, they continue to criminalize people and make the city in some neighborhoods into an open-air prison. When you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, you have summonses, you have warrants now for those summonses. This is a huge, huge problem, and the coalition came together to solve the problem, but we need to be able to come together in communities like Sunset Park. Last month we had a forum and a town hall in Spanish Harlem. We are looking forward to having ones in Queens and the Bronx to make sure that we reach out to residents of these communities that are being most impacted by the policies and talk to you. If you visit our website, brokenwindows.org, you will see we've already started to formulate an agenda. We call it the People's Agenda. It's a 22-point, 3-part plan that talks about things like creating public bathrooms to address the issues of public urination, to create performer programs that actually help subway performers who are often arrested or ticketed to help them become more successful. We want to find solutions that are not police-based to the problems in our city, and we think that it's time that the residents and the community members who've been most affected have the biggest voice in how we do this. The mayor has doubled down several times and said he is committed to broken windows policing, despite what happened to Eric Garner, despite what happened to the Daza family, a family of street vendors here in 2014, despite what happens to all of those viral videos we all share on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, all those police interactions. At its core, the police interactions are what create that possibility for a video to come about. So we want to talk about those interactions and how we don't need some of those interactions and how there are solutions to some of these quality of life issues that don't have a gun and a badge. So with that said, I'm going to pass it along to the moderators. I am also going to be the bad guy in the room tonight because I will be the time checker. So as we talk, we're going to try to keep everybody, including the elected officials, to a tight time. That way we can maximize the amount of participation. So as we go along the room, I will pass the mic to people, but we will try to keep it to about 2 minutes, 3 minutes on the responses. Thank you.
So tonight, let's welcome our invited guests, Public Advocate Letitia James and Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez. Also, let's recognize other elected officials that are in the room. Our State Assemblyman Felix Ortiz. So anyway, what's important tonight, this conversation is important and must be led by the community. You know, most of the time we go to town halls that are controlled by elected officials, by the city of New York, and it's staged and set up in such a way where questions are scripted, where behind the scenes there's a lot of control, and the things that are really presented at the town hall are not really led by the community, voiced by the community, and the critical voice is always missing. And that's something here in Sunset Park that we make sure we won't allow. And as El Grito de Sunset Park, we've been involved in documenting a lot of abuses that have taken place throughout the years, denouncing them, but also what's taking place here is more than just presenting a video of police violence. It's about the work that has to be done in the community to hold those accountable, police accountable, elected officials accountable, and this is to make sure that that process is clear, that we make sure that as a community, these public spaces are used to do exactly that. So thank you all for coming, and without further ado, let's hear from our elected officials. Thank you.
Good evening, Brooklyn. Let me start off by thanking Dennis and all the other organizers for inviting me to come speak to you about the issues involving broken windows. I've been the district attorney of Brooklyn for about 8 months now after Ken Thompson passed away, and in a very short period of time, I've made some efforts to make sure that the criminal justice system gets smaller and gets fairer. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk about it. I also want to thank our public advocate, Letitia James, for being here with me today. So I'm here to talk a little bit about what I've been doing. I'm also here to hear what the community wants to say, and I hope that we have a productive conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background because it really matters in how I view the job of a district attorney. I grew up, my family's from Puerto Rico. I grew up here, I was born here in Brooklyn, and I was born in Williamsburg, Bushwick. When my parents separated, I wound up in East New York. And growing up in East New York during the 1980s and 90s, I realized that I lived in a neighborhood where crack cocaine had really started to take hold and became an epidemic. I saw violence, and I saw a lot of young people turning to drugs and other kind of illegal activity because they felt there was few options for them. But I also, as a young man of color, saw and felt what it was like to live in an over-policed community. And for me, I believe that if I had the opportunity one day that I could make a difference, not only making our community safer, but making sure that we could have a fairer criminal justice system. So I know what it feels like to live in a community that is distrust between law enforcement and the district attorney's office and law enforcement and our police department. And I want to start with a really basic premise. These laws that we have are here to protect us, protect our families, and to make sure that we live in a safe community. But when the laws are no longer working in the sense that we don't feel protected, then it is time for a change. And so I've started changing the way the Brooklyn DA's office operates. One of the things that happened was, if you look at 2010 versus now.
Mr. Gonzalez, sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to make sure that we give the community the maximum time to be involved. I'm quite sure anyone can Google you to find out what your background is. This is critically important that we give the community the maximum time.
And
so if you could limit that to about 15 more seconds.
Sir, I've committed to speaking here about the issues.
Understood.
So
and you'll have an opportunity to answer any questions coming from So if you could wrap that up in about 15 seconds, we're gonna move to the public advocate for her introduction and keep this train moving. Thank you.
Well, what I like to talk about is the changes that we've made in the DA's office that I think impact the issue of broken windows. So I'll try to incorporate as much as I can in the time and the questions that we got. But we've changed the way the office operates in a substantial way. We've driven out many misdemeanor cases from how we prosecute cases. In 2010, there were about 118,000 misdemeanors in Brooklyn. Last year, we were about 87,000. That's a 26% decrease in low-level offenses that have come through the Brooklyn
Thank
system.
you, DA Gonzalez.
Right,
We're going to have you wrap that up. Let's turn it over to the public advocate, Miss Latisha James. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Sunset Park. First, let me just say this before I begin my remarks. The district attorney and I just came from the wake of the young child who lost her life. Continue to keep that child in your prayers each and every day. As most of you know, I'm the former public defender. I worked at Legal Aid Society for a long period of time. During my years at the Legal Aid Society, I've defended countless number of young people in the criminal justice system, and I know the harm that it can happen, I know the harm that it can cause to individuals. As a public advocate of the city of New York, I'll be very brief. As most of you know, I sought to get the grand jury minutes in the Eric Garner case. As most of you know, I've been very supportive of violence interrupters, and when I was in the city council previously, we provided funds to violence interrupters, and I'm so glad that this city council has continued to promote violence interrupters all throughout the city of New York. I'm very supportive of the Second Chance program, and obviously recognize that the broken windows system of policing has not worked. The reason why there's broken windows in communities of color is because there's been a non-investment in communities of color. We need to invest in more individuals, we need to invest in young people, we need to invest in public housing, and poverty should not be a crime. God bless you.
Thank you so much, public advocate, for keeping that brief. Thank you for that. We're going to keep this train rolling, like I said. The first section of our evening tonight is, with respect to that, actually, police accountability. We all know that the police department is the first stop on your train to mass incarceration, the first stop on your train to brutalization, disrespect, and discourtesy. How many of any of you in this audience this evening has ever received a summons or know someone has gotten a summons, that little pink piece of paper? Raise your hand high, high, up high, up high. Anybody? Great. So we see that. So we know that's a problem in our community. So we just want to make sure that our elected officials get a feel of what's in the room, of what people deal with in real time. So without further ado, we're going to bring up Mr. Nicholas Haywood Sr. He is the father of Nicholas Naquan Haywood Jr., killed in the Gowanus houses by the NYPD. Please welcome him and show your respect, Sunset Park.
First, let me say good evening, everyone. And I'd like to thank you for that introduction. I just say my name is Nicholas Haywood. I'm the father of Nicholas Naquan Haywood Jr.
Test, test.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Nicholas Haywood Sr., the father of Nicholas Naquan Haywood Jr., who was murdered by NYPD 23 years ago. This happened September 27, 1994. Broken windows has been a target in my area, and that is partially to blame as to why Nicholas Jr. and others are being targeted in the communities like the Gowanus houses where I grew up in. This is something that's not invisible to elected officials. They all know about broken windows. They know the one who actually organized it, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. who himself is basically a racist man. And he's also one of the first fascist mayors in New York City. He was a fascist mayor. And then he had his first police commissioner, William Bryan, a devil with no disguise. Stolen Lives, which I am a part of now, documents over 2,000 cases nationwide of people innocent, unarmed, committing no crimes, no threats to officers, but yet they are no longer here, they are dead. Yes, this is a very important issue because I have actually spoken many hearings. I spoke to many elected officials, including Charles Hines, Ken Thompson, and briefly with this young man right here also. Broken windows should be a main priority for every elected official. All of them should be concerned with broken windows, and actually, we don't need it no more. If you want to keep your community safe, it's going to be up to you. I have been struggling to get programs into the Gonzalez houses. I now have a 501 organization named after my son, which I have made many attempts to many of these elected officials to get a safe haven for the youth in our community. Because like I said, it's up to us. These are our children. At least I know myself, I don't look for no protection from nowhere else but for myself. That's why when my son was murdered, well, the pain still lingers on, and all of the corruption inside the police department is still going on, and my community remains a target. And not only that, I myself have become a target because I have been outspoken about police brutality, police murder, and what happened to my son. I myself became a target. I've been falsely accused and arrested by NYPD just because I speak out about this. So that's why I say this is a very, very important topic. And to really have an elected official who's really, really going to push to get broken windows ended. If elected official doesn't have that on his agenda, we shouldn't want him nowhere in office. If they don't have broken windows on their agenda, we don't need them in our office. We really don't. Because I don't know, I know Sunset Park community, I don't live far from here. I've been born and raised in Brooklyn also. And not to take up too much of the time, but the only thing I say, the pain, like I said, of my son's murder, and mind you now, that's what he was murdered, the officer who had actually murdered my son. Playing a game of cops and robbers, plastic toy guns, he sees the officer, he drops the plastic toy gun after the officer asks the children, what are you doing here? My son dropped the plastic toy gun and said, we don't need playing. The officer shot and killed him anyway. Charles Hines covered up the case. There was never no indictment or anything on the case of Nicholas Jr., despite the fact that the officer himself contradicted all of Charles Hines' reasons and findings in closing that case. Charles Hines himself, from what I know, he should be in prison right now for the corruption that he's done in Brooklyn, New York. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is no secret. Of course, also, Ken Thompson also showed the corruption that was going on in Charles Hines' office when he exposed all of those innocent lives that were sentenced to prison for all of those years under Charles Hines. But yet, Charles Hines still runs the streets. Sometimes I really think he's even running the Brooklyn District Attorney's office right now. That's right, because I don't see many changes inside that office. The same things that was going on with Charles Hines is still going on in that office today. Exactly, right. And that's what I say, okay, I just want to say this one thing also. Charles Hines covered up that case. Ken Thompson, from what I actually believe, he never even seen the end results of that investigation. Ken Thompson passed on before the investigation was completed, which was in August. It was in August, and they didn't come and tell me that the case had been closed. They closed the case until November, when I asked for another meeting with them. So, I mean, just to actually really have the really trust and faith into elected officials, those, who have the power to just ignore you once you're in office. This is something that we, as communities, need to really think about and get together and work together.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward. It's not often that we get an opportunity to really feel the experience of the family members, which I call survivors, of police murder and police terror in the city of New York. You may get a 10-second soundbite on the news, but really no feel of the experience and how long Mr. Hayward has been fighting for justice for his son. And what we're gonna do in that vein, continuing with that office, is we're gonna have Miss Hortensia Peterson come up to the mic and address Sunset Park. She is the aunt of Akai Gurley, and let me just tie this together. This is a community meeting about broken windows, and Akai Gurley was murdered by NYPD in the hallway of the New York City Housing Authority, the Pink Houses, while they were doing what is called a vertical patrol. A vertical patrol. Do we all know what a vertical patrol is? Anybody in here live in NYCHA Public Housing? If you do, raise your hand. I live in NYCHA Public Housing, and I've lived there for almost 14 years. And the NYPD conducts patrols where they are in our hallways, in our staircases, in our courtyards, escalating confrontations with tenants and their guests. So, this was another example of how broken windows policing and as manifested as a vertical patrol in the New York City Housing Authority cost Akai Gurley his life. So we're gonna have Ms. Peterson address us, and please feel her experience and give her your undivided attention. Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me here today. Once again, my name is Hortensia Peterson. I am the aunt of Akai Gurley, who was murdered November 20th, 2014 in the Lewis Pink House project. Akai was a father, Akai was a son, Akai was a brother, a nephew, and Akai was a human being. When he was murdered, and I'm not gonna say accidentally shot like how the press and the DA office at the time said it happened, he was murdered by NYPD. And to this day, my family is still suffering. Akai's mom is still suffering because of this unjust justice that took her child. It hurts, not only as an aunt, but it hurts as being part of a community when these police officers come into your community, and because they have a gun, they have a badge. And I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. You see this Brooklyn, he's running for Brooklyn DA? You guys need to know the characteristic of people that's coming for your votes. When they come for your votes and they promise, they don't fulfill their promise once they're in the office. Nicholas Haywood had helped Ken Thompson. When Ken Thompson got in office, Nicholas Haywood case was pushed to the back burner. Know those who come to your area, and what are they going to do for you when they get in the office? Are they going to hold police officers accountable, or are they going to give them a pass? That's what's going on. So be very careful of anyone that come in your area and they say, well, we're going to do this. If they my questions today, because I have a lot, but my main important question, and I want Mr. Mendez to answer, is what was your thought on the recommendation of no jail time for Peter Liang on the Akai Gurley case? Do you think it was the right decision, and why? And are you going to hold cops accountable? And if you're elected into office, are you going to have an open policy door to the families of police brutality? Because when my nephew got murdered, and every time we try to, myself or my team try to have an appointment to see the DA, we always got excuses. Or he's unavailable, he's out of town, he's in the conference. Never one time, only 2 times I can tell you, when my sister came up here, when we had to request, and then when I met him for the first time, are your office going to have an open policy to families of police brutality? Because we can't go anywhere else but to you, to your office. So if we can't go to your office, who can we go to if we elected you guys? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Is that mic working, DA? Is the mic in the middle working for you? Is the mic working for you? Test that. Okay, great, that mic is working. Okay, so that question I'll repeat for those who did not hear. Ms. Peterson asked very simply, how will you hold police officers accountable? What is your assessment of the no jail time recommendation made by Ken Thompson at the time and currently are still in that office? And will families have an open door policy to the Brooklyn District Attorney's office when their loved ones are killed by NYPD?
So let me start with what is most important, which is that everyone feel that there's justice in the county, that the people will be given the opportunity. And listen, Ms. Peterson, it was a tragedy what happened to Akai. It was a crime, it was wrong. And I want to bring everyone back to when that time happened, because during that time, there was many people who said this was just an accident. In the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, we took the position that what happened to Akai Gurley was not just an accident, it was a crime. And Ken Thompson went ahead, he convened a grand jury that indicted Officer Peter Liang. And we secured a conviction in that case of manslaughter. Now, I understand that the decision that was made not to give jail time was a decision that was hurtful and disappointing to the family, because the family wanted justice for Akai Gurley. But one of the things that I think that we need to be very clear on is that judges and prosecutors, when they're deciding and recommending a sentence, one of the things they have to do is weigh all the evidence and all the facts in the case. And the thing that happened in that case, when Ken recommended 6 months house arrest, and he recommended the rest of the things that he recommended, he thought that that was a fair disposition, because Peter Liang went into that housing building not to hurt someone, but because
DA Gonzalez, I'm so sorry. Let's stick to the question is, what is your opinion on the no jail time recommendation for Officer Peter Liang? Yours, the history, we got it. We know exactly what happened. What is your feeling on the no jail time recommendation?
Yeah, well, I'm explaining it. So, the recommendation was based on the fact that Peter Liang should not be held responsible for all the wrongdoings of other officers. He should be held responsible for what he actually did. And that was what the recommendation was based on.
Now, I have to tell you, Ms. Peterson, that decision.
Let's stay respectful so everyone can hear, please. We will have questions from the audience. This is for you. Tonight is for you. So you will be next.
So that decision was something that was a difficult decision, But Ken made that decision, and I do stand by his decision. I think he made the decision as a district attorney that he believed was the right decision, and he based that on reviewing the evidence and having really prayed on this issue.
Thank you. Will families have an open door to your office that are brutalized by the police? That was the third question.
Absolutely. And absolutely.
Thank you. Public Advocate Letitia James, would you also like to offer anything in relation to that?
So one, we should not pair rookie cops together at all. Two, I respect Ken Thompson. Ken Thompson is a friend, was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine. Ken Thompson happens to be, lived around the corner from me, but I disagree with the sentence. Three, we should invest in public housing more and more and more. We should not divest in public housing. Obviously, we need to address the lighting situation and all the conditions in public housing. I have an open door policy, and I think going forward, obviously, working with the district attorney, I look forward to working with him as we continue to hold police officers accountable.
Thank you, Ms. James. If anyone would like to ask a question with relation to police accountability, please hold your hand up. You can step to this mic. We're going to have 2 members from the community. Hold your hand up. If you would like to speak, hold your hand up. Anyone has a question? Up high, up high. 1, 2, step to the mic, please. While these folks are traveling up to the mic, what I will say is, I had an opportunity to be present for the testimony of Police Officer Peter Liang and Sean Landau, his partner. I sat in the courtroom and listened to that testimony. And that testimony was very, very clear. Those gentlemen bypassed a lit hallway. Are we all with me, family? Because this is what is not reported. This is what's not reported. The officers bypassed a lit hallway to utilize a hallway that was not lit, with his gun out, and fired into a dark stairwell. To make matters worse, and I was present for the testimony, they looked for the gun casing instead of checking the hallway. That is corruption. They attempted to bypass the police radios and use personal cell phones in order to contact supervision. This was testified to in court. Meanwhile, a kind girlie's body lay below the stairwell, needing medical attention, and they're looking for the bullet. People go to jail for that. Am I right, family? So we're going to take it to our audience members that stood up since they made it up. Thank you. Please introduce yourself if you can to.
Hi, my name is Peter Wong. I'm a member of the Community Board 7. One thing I'd like to say is that I think it was unfortunate that a lot of the Chinese community felt that Peter Liang was innocent because he killed someone and he was responsible for what he did. What I do want to say though is the fact that he was a young man, he was poorly trained, he was poorly supervised, and the police are responsible for that. But the injustice is not that he didn't get jail time, the injustice is that so many African Americans and Hispanics and other people of color don't get that same benefit of the doubt. So I don't think the injustice was that he did not get enough jail time. I think the injustice is that so many others who deserve that same benefit of the doubt did not get it. And I just want to say that that's really important.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Sir?
Good afternoon. My name is Derek Kane. I'm one of the members of the Brooklyn Community Bail Fund. In that capacity, we provide bail funding for indigent New Yorkers. As to date, we've provided bail for several thousand New Yorkers. Low-level offenses. In your office, how do you intend to stop granting bail to low-level offenders who can't afford it in the first place, but languish on Rikers Island for months and months, which also contributes to mass incarceration?
Before you answer that, public advocate, let me just do a little follow-up. What are those people usually held in Rikers for?
Low-level offenses, jumping the turnstiles, arguments with their girlfriend, shoplifting,
Broken windows type offenses. Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. We're going to turn that over. Public advocate. Mike working in the middle? Thank you.
So obviously we need to reform our bail system, but most importantly, the vast majority of individuals on Rikers Island are suffering from mental illness, they're homeless, and a lot of them from low-level crimes. And what we need to do is radically transform our criminal justice system because it's broken. And let me also go on to say to Mr. Long, the scales of justice are not balanced. We know that particularly for communities of color and for poor people in the city of New York, which is why I support closing down Rikers Island.
DA Gonzalez, we're going to turn that question over to you as well. What is your response with respect to low-level offenders languishing in prison because they cannot afford bail?
So I'm changing the policy in Brooklyn regarding bail. We've started to do this slowly, but we've already started the process. Going forward, on misdemeanor cases, we are not going to be asking for jail on these cases unless, first and foremost, we're asking for significant jail on the case. And we're also not going to be asking for bail on the overwhelming majority of these cases. So that's one of the ways that we're going to prevent people from languishing in prison. The ADAs have started to get trained on this. We've been starting to work with the bail fund and starting to work with supervised release.
Thank you for that. We have one more from the audience. This is for you, Sunset Park in Brooklyn. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Shaniqua. I'm part of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I also grew up in Gonzalez, Brooklyn, where the projects that Mr. Nicholas Haywood was just talking about, where his son was murdered by the NYPD. I'm here tonight because I want to share that, you speak about the changes you claim to have made in the criminal justice system in the 8 months that you've been here, yet my brother was just convicted of a crime that he did not commit, and despite the trial being a shit show and the evidence not holding up, he was still convicted, and his co-defendants were just sentenced to 100 years in prison for attempted murder. On top of that, the media has been criminalizing him for the last 2 years and continues to criminalize him, saying he was a getaway driver for this crime, which, first of all, he can't drive, he doesn't have a license, he doesn't have a permit, he doesn't even have a New York State ID yet. So I don't understand how that works. So I don't have a question because honestly, whatever you have to say, it doesn't matter because I don't believe in the system. I don't believe in anything that you're claiming that you're gonna do, because all of you come up here and claim you're gonna do something. So I'm here to speak to the audience and let you all know that if you actually want to see change in your community, you have to come together and do it yourself. And if you want to do that, my organization will be going out to Washington, D.C. on September 16th and 17th to Howard University to convene for the Congress of Resistance to talk about how we can come together, how the different organizations, how all of us multinational oppressed working class people can make changes for ourselves in our communities for our people. So if you would like more information about that, you can check out congressofresistance.org. I have a couple of flyers, not that many. If you want one, I will give you one. Other than that, I have no questions for these people because, like I said, I believe in you people. I don't believe in them.
Thank you. All right, thank you for the audience. Again, this is for you. This is for the members of the community. This is not an orchestrated dog and pony show. You will have an opportunity to address the elected officials as well as speak to one another. As well as this is a town hall on broken windows. This is a working meeting, y'all. This is a working meeting. This is for you to work and find one another, to do something to change your own conditions. Don't wait for an offshoot of the city of New York to do it for you. Don't wait for an elected official to tell you what you need. Assess what your needs are, meet with one another, and get it done. This is how the organizations in the Coalition to End Broken Windows came together. We didn't wait for a DA, we We didn't wait for a public advocate. We didn't wait for our mayor. We didn't wait for a congressman or city councilman to wave money in our face. This is about personal sacrifice to do what's necessary to change the lives for our people, okay? So thank you for hanging in there with us. I know it's hot in there. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take it over to Dennis. He's gonna continue the moderation.
So next we're gonna have some other invited guests, Jorge from Queens Neighborhood United, who's gonna talk about policing and immigration. You know, broken windows is very much connected to how this city is supposed to be a sanctuary city, and undocumented people are not protected because of broken windows. So, Jorge.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Jorge Cabanillas, and I'm here representing Barrios Unidos de Queens, Queens Neighborhood United in English. It's a grassroots, woman-led organization that works around the issues of gentrification, policing, and immigration. We are here tonight first to stand in solidarity with everyone who is against broken windows policing, and two, to share our experience with Brooklyn. As we know, our sister borough has much of the same issues, and in some instances more intensified, as hypergentrification continues to push police to enforce broken windows at a higher rate in order to accommodate new people coming in and make real estate development markets more secure for private developers. Roughly 81% of the 7.3 million people hit with violations between 2001 and 2013 were Black and Hispanic, according to the NYCLU. 81% of all people charged with petty infractions, like walking in the park after dark, spitting, and bicycling on the sidewalk, were Black and Latino in NYC. If you look at a map done by the NYCLU, which shows communities who received the most summonses, for these petty infractions, you will see that it is either Black and brown predominant communities of low income and communities who currently are in the eyes of private developers. In this light, as a person of color, you can feel how this tactic is used to discipline our communities. For newcomers, while at the same time used for the benefit of the police, as they use these stats to represent their active work. But that is essentially translated for us into physical, financial, and psychological repression. Because when you're constantly harassed for minor infractions or for making an honest living through street vending, you are constantly shown that you're a second-class citizen and that your right to exist is constantly put to the test. Two outstanding street vendor incidents in our communities in our recent memory, both undocumented. One, about 2 years ago, a QNU member's food was bleached by a police officer in the middle of the street for not abiding to leave the space she was occupying. A refusal to comply with losing a day's pay was enough cause to discipline her through a shame tactic like bleaching cooked food. This is aside from the constant summoning she endures on a daily basis. The woman has been street vending for 20 plus years in our community, and the situation is only moderated at times, but to this day harassment persists. Another more recent incident was in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, where a street vendor's daughter was violently attacked and pinned down to the street in front of her children by park rangers. All caused by a park ranger's approach to a mother who was vending. As the mother argued with the ranger, the daughter of the street vendor pushed the cart away in an attempt to get away. As the park ranger continued to discuss with them, the cart accidentally rubbed the park ranger, which was enough for 3 rangers to tackle the woman down in front of other street vendors, the community, and her kids. One can't simply dismiss the generational traumas that are passed down from authorities through broken windows policing. Since an early age, these street vendors' children are taught that any authority, from the current president on down, is looking to oust their mothers and fathers. Both incidents escalated from a simple right to exist, as both were asked to vacate the premises where they were street vending and making a living. Street vendors are constantly under the threat of financial and physical violence by the police. And one last thing, an attack to street vendors, whether through summoning to death or physical displacement, is an attack on all working class people. including undocumented working class people. Working class people are fed from these carts. They are some of the cheapest places where you can find good low-cost food in a city that is constantly getting more and more expensive. Therefore, street vendors play a vital role in our community's right to exist. This right to exist can be helped through a lifting on the caps on street vendor licenses, but it can never be fully fulfilled as long as broken windows policing continues to exist. I have a question for both of you. First, Letitia James. Can you explain, I know you're involved in housing and you really want to make it affordable. So can you please explain to us the process of privatization of public housing known as infill development or Next Generation NYCHA program, where NYCHA basically sells its land to private developers. And for both of you, can you please tell the audience whether you will or will not do your part to end racist broken windows policing?
So first, let me answer the question with regards to vendors. What you did not mention is the fact that we should end the discretionary cap on vendors in the city of New York. And so as a co-sponsor of that legislation, we should move that legislation forward so that we can have more permits for vendors in the city. Two, obviously, the president of, that man who's in the White House, obviously his immigration policies are affecting and hurting individuals, and particularly this ban, which is nothing more than a Muslim ban. Obviously, all of us should raise our voices against this Muslim ban and the limited definition of what a family is. The fact that they exclude grandparents and nieces and nephews is ridiculous. Let me also go on to say to you, broken windows, obviously, what we really should be focusing on in this city is violent crime, gang violence. That is what is causing crime to increase. We should focus on gang violence and violent individuals in the city of New York as opposed to focusing on low-level offenses. Three, did I answer all your questions?
So
Next Gen NYCHA, that's what you missed.
Public housing. So the privatization of public housing, right now, as most of you know, this president is not investing in public housing. Public housing is broken. What the city of New York is proposing is building on underutilized land in public housing. What I have proposed in the city of New York is focusing on space and building 100% affordable housing for low and moderate income individuals, and particularly seniors who are, again, being impacted by gentrification and the increase and the rise in rents in the city of New York. So, do I support taking a playground from children? No. Do I support taking away a garden from public housing? No. If there is available land that is owned by the city of New York, and there's a significant number of lots, and there's a significant amount of state land, we should focus on building affordable housing and making it for low and moderate income individuals, and particularly and most importantly seniors, and units need to be larger for children in the city of New York. That's what we need to do, and we need to land bank it and give it to community-based organizations.
So, Gloria, I agree with you on what you were speaking about as it relates to this. And two of the things that I've been very involved in as the district attorney is getting rid of these summons warrants. We've had these begin again programs. We've vacated them. There was over 3,000 people that have come through that. More importantly, there are 1.2 to 1.5 million summons warrants across New York City. 25% of them are in Brooklyn. There are not 400,000 criminals in Brooklyn. And so I've moved with some of the other district attorneys to vacate summons warrants, and we plan to do that within the next few weeks so we can get hundreds of thousands of these summons warrants vacated. We also know that in this particular time, these summons warrants are particularly tricky and dangerous because they have immigration consequences. These summons warrants are arrest warrants. So your $25 fine, you can spend, not only can you spend 24 hours locked up in central booking, which is ridiculous and unfair, but they can also be used to prioritize you for deportation. And so with that, I've also created in Brooklyn an immigration affairs unit and hired immigration attorneys so that these low-level offenses, the district attorneys that work there understand the consequences of when they're offering plea bargains or sentence recommendations. Because my position is very clear on this. I don't believe that any resident in this city should ever be deported because they committed a low-level offense. And so we've changed that in the Brooklyn DA's office. And I've been speaking out across this issue. I've been battling Attorney General Sessions on this. I've written an op-ed on it. I've spoken publicly, and I've had 7 immigration forums across Brooklyn telling non-citizens how they can protect themselves in this time and age. So I do agree 100%.
We're gonna keep this train moving, but I'm gonna say something for clarity. Let's say something for clarity. You don't need a clean slate program if the police stop messing with people. You don't need that. Are we clear on that, Sunset Park? Are we clear on that? Okay, this is what churns the nonprofit, because then you got clean slate working with nonprofits to clear warrants for low-level offenses for people of color, black people, Puerto Ricans, Mexican people, undocumented, lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, transgender people. Then you gotta go down somewhere and get it vacated so you don't get locked up. But how about if our elected officials make it clear that this type of behavior by NYPD toward our community is unacceptable? This is about broken windows policing. That's the front door. That's the front door. And one more comment before we get to Al. Next Gen NYCHA, did I not say NYCHA resident in the building? Okay? Once NYCHA begins disposing of their property, it affects your ownership rights as a tenant. Hear me and hear me good. We're not gonna blame Trump. These same people been sitting in office when Next Gen was formed under Democratic president. So we're not gonna have these elected officials blame Trump for the next 3 years and 6 months. We're all smarter than that in this room, am I right, Sunset Park? Okay, no, we're not going for that. Next Gen NYCHA is not new. That didn't start in January of 2017. That's been going on for 10 years just now, coming into our mind, sight, and fruition. So no. So none of you should promote the sale of NYCHA property. And affordable housing is a myth. As long as the AMI, the average median income, includes Westchester County, it will not be affordable for Brooklyn. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. So any politician that's saying affordable housing is blowing smoke up your behind. Because what does that calculation entail? It's not for you. So we're gonna stop that. This is what the community meeting is about. Making sure we kill all of those myths. So with that, we're gonna bring it to Al. He represents the black immigrant community in Brooklyn, and he's gonna address our elected officials in the community. Thank you.
Peace, Sunset Park. How y'all doing? Elected officials, how you doing? So, I just wanted to say that first of all, working for the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, one thing I noticed in the city is that there's a lot of marches that I've been seeing in the city since Trump got elected, right? Battery Park, Foley Square, all these rallies. But they seem to focus solely on him, not realizing that there was a system that put him in place. But not only that, when you have a maniac like that in office, it's your local official, it's on a local level that you stop these policies from affecting you and your community. With that being said, I've been told for the past few years that New York is a sanctuary city. I live in Brooklyn, so it's a little hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe, being that my family's from the Caribbean, right? So it's hard for me to believe that when almost 80% of people deported back to the Caribbean are deported for low-level offenses or non-violent offenses. It's hard for me to believe that. It's hard for me to believe it's a sanctuary city when I'm seeing El Grito footage of cops, aggressive policing here in Sunset Park, beating up on pregnant women, beating up on indiscriminately women, children. The only thing they do discriminate against is if it's your color. But if you're a woman, if you're pregnant, if you're a child, if you're a teenager, it doesn't matter. It's hard to believe that. Now, we all know the facts about how policed our communities are. We know the statistics about how many of us get thrown in jail and what rate. But at the same time that we know all these things, one thing, if you get arrested for a low-level offense, your fingerprint goes to a federal database, right? It goes to a federal database, so if you're undocumented, you can be found out quickly by ICE. NYPD doesn't have to collaborate with ICE. They do half the job for them. So that being said, I live in a community where I see 8 cops walking 8 deep down the street for no reason. I see cop towers, but there's still shootings going on regardless. All this police presence doesn't stop the violence in our communities. Right where we have a cop tower, there were 2 or 3 shootings last year. So that doesn't make sense to me. With that being said, if we know that low-level offenses can lead you, if getting arrested for it can get your fingerprint into a federal database, and we call ourselves a sanctuary city, why is it that now that broken windows is thought of as an afterthought? Why is it that now it's being brought up? It's being brought up because the community is what's bringing it up. As was said before, we cannot rely on our elected officials to just, by the goodness of their hearts, to just make these things happen. We have to keep pressing them. We have to keep pressuring them. That's what this here town hall is about. If we want to be a real sanctuary city, we have to look at safety from the bottom up. Our vision of safety that we have in our communities is another community's vision of safety for us. It's pacification. That's what it is. When Giuliani implemented that back in '94, that's what it was about, pacification. To make the city scared of black and brown people. And even though we've had a different party come into play, we still have the same policies. They just call it by a different name. All right? So I do have a question for the elected officials. Are we a sanctuary city with these type of policies taking place? Can we honestly say that we're a sanctuary city? When I see people languishing in the immigration detention centers for misdemeanors that they committed because they're constantly being in contact with the police. Are we really a sanctuary city? Thank you. Peace.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I want to say is that I agree with part of the problem is that when people get arrested, those prints, even if the case gets dismissed ultimately, those prints go to federal databases. And one of the things that I've been working on and piloting with the City Council and Melissa Martin-Garrido, we have also a opioid problem in this city. And one of the things that I'm looking to do, one of the things that I'm looking to do is pre-trial, but also pre-booking diversion, which means that when someone gets arrested, that we can divert their case out of the criminal justice system before they're booked on it, so that that doesn't happen. And so one of the things we're talking about is piloting this. The City Council has given us some money to start this, and one of the things that it's going to do is prevent exactly that problem, which is having those fingerprints then stay on, even though the person never actually gets prosecuted. They get arrested, but then the case goes to diversion immediately without coming to court. And I hope that that will solve that issue. I'm committed to trying this. We've started that kind of work with 16 and 17-year-olds, and now we're going to expand it to other cases and drug cases in particular.
A couple of things. With regards to the comments that were just made regarding public housing, I think it's important that everyone understand history. And everyone understand that the divestment of public housing started with Ronald Reagan and then went to Bush. 16 years of divestment from public housing because public housing was created by the feds during the previous time, a long period of time. As a result of that, the question is whether or not the state and the city could step up and fill the void in federal funding. It's also important to understand that public housing all across this nation, in Chicago, Philadelphia, and other urban centers, has been demolished. And what we are trying to do is come up with ways to save public housing in the city of New York. Next Gen was under another name under Mayor Bloomberg. It wasn't called Next Gen. Next Gen is a newest creation under this administration. And the question is whether or not we're going to privatize public housing in order to save it. I say no. I say we should come up with creative ideas with regards to saving public housing because because mold and capital issues are real. Two, AMI is not a city issue. AMI is a state initiative. And that's why we should focus on providing city funds so that we don't have to deal with AMI, so that we can truly build affordable housing, just like Pratt Area Community Council has done, and Impact, and Fifth Avenue Committee, and organizations that truly focus on affordable housing because we've done it. We have done it. When you use just city funds and you provide a low-income tax credits and you use community-based organizations, you can build affordable housing without going to private developers. Because oil is to Texas as real estate is to New York. And what we need to do is address the gentrification and the displacement of New Yorkers, which is obviously changing the complexion in the city of New York, and provide for low-income individuals in the city. Lastly, are we a sanctuary city? Some people have argued to me that President Obama deported more individuals. It's just not true. Just not true at all. There is stepped up enforcement. There is stepped up enforcement. Let me just finish. Let me finish my statement. He did. Can I finish? Relax. Let me finish.
Let's watch that profanity. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
President Obama did deport a significant number of people. There's no arguing. You can't argue with facts. That's the facts. However, ICE, as a result of what they're doing now, is ICE on steroids. It's above and beyond what President Obama did. Because President Obama focused primarily, one, on certain categories. Now, under this administration, under this president, they're arresting individuals for jumping the turnstile, for engaging in relatively minor offenses, broken windows.
ICE don't do that.
NYPD
do that.
ICE is doing that.
ICE is not at 149th and 3rd Avenue every single morning, Letitia Jane, and I'm gonna have to cut your mic. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna tell y'all something right now. You heard the people from this community say that we have to trust one another. And I'm gonna tell you again. And you can decide who you want to listen to. Putting development on NYCHA public space is not about saving public housing. I don't care what they say. I live in these developments. I don't care what they say. It is about relinquishing the tenants' rights to own their own apartments. When you dispose of NYCHA property, it changes the composition of the land, which affects whether or not those tenants can own their own apartments. This is not about throwing money at the developments. This is what the politicians will have you believe. That's not the fight. If you don't believe me, Section 18, HUD Public Housing Law. And this is recorded. I do my homework. Section 18 of HUD Public Housing Law. Anytime NYCHA disposes of public land, they must make an offering to the tenants that can effectively properly manage their own development. So the fight is not going down and begging racists for money. That's not the fight. The fight is, can you position your constituents to properly
Williams, a public defender with the 5 borough defenders.
Thank you, Dennis. Just for clarification, I am the immigration attorney. I practice civil law for homeless youth here in the city. And because of the way that our city and our nation criminalizes homelessness and low-income communities, I joined the 5 borough defenders so that I could learn more about what I already knew was an unjust criminal legal system, but I wanted to learn more about how unnecessarily punitive our criminal legal system is to the young homeless people that I work with. So I joined the 5 borough defenders, and a number of the defenders taught me how much discretion our elected DAs have to decline to prosecute broken windows offenses. And I read Mr. Gonzalez's survey responses to the New Kings Democrats, and I heard a lot of the stuff that you were trying to cram in the beginning about growing up as a young man of color, growing up in violence. And I also read that you reached out to a Harvard researcher to investigate possible racial disparities within the DA's office, which with all due respect I find pretty laughable. If you were to come to all of these town hall meetings and listen to the people in this room, you don't need anyone from Harvard or any other Ivy League school to tell you that our system is racially biased. The people who are going into jail, the people who are being prosecuted because of their low income status, because they are homeless, because our city, our government, our state is trying to sweep low income homeless people off of the streets. The people in this room are very educated about what is happening. They are here, and thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for everyone who organized this. But I want to know what the DA specifically, but all of our elected officials are going to do beyond town halls during a campaign time. But what are you going to do if and when you are elected to make sure that we can hold you accountable to your promises? For one instance, DA Gonzalez mentioned something about how you carefully worded it, slowly going to change policies so that if no jail is being sought, no bail will be set. According to, I have a redacted transcript right here from a Brooklyn criminal court in which one of your DAs was seeking $1,000 bail on someone who couldn't pay for a turnstile. They couldn't pay to access a train, so they jumped the turnstile, and the DA was seeking $1,000 bail. And because our public defenders are educated and are listening to these public forums, listening to the statements that are being made and trying to hold people accountable, it's on record where the public defender from the Brooklyn Legal Aid Office, shout out to Brooklyn Legal Aid, where that public defender said, actually, according to DA Gonzalez, you're not going to be seeking bail when you're not going to be seeking jail. This is a turnstile jumping case. And I can tell you this transcript is full of excuses. So I want to know, what are you going to do beyond the campaign trail so that people can come here and talk to you? Not everyone has access to the courts like lawyers. I know over here someone said that they were speaking, they were able to be in the courtroom when Peter Liang was testifying. Not all of us have that opportunity because of work, because of family, because of obligations. So how are we to know that you are actually holding your word and keeping true to what you're saying in these very public forums when the cameras are on?
Thank you. So, one of the things that, and I'm glad you raised the issue because I had reached out to the bail fund to see, is the policy working? Is the policy of not asking for bail working? You know, one of the things is that the Brooklyn DA's office is the lowest, ask for bail the least amount of any district attorney's office. But I wanted to make sure, and so what you'll see, and I invite you to go to criminal court, is you'll see that every day now, supervisors from the DA's office have to be present and they have to authorize whether bail is going to be made, not young assistant district attorneys. Because I was concerned about times where young assistant district attorneys were not using the discretion appropriately. And so very recently I implemented this policy where their supervisor will be there. But I also want to say another thing. As we talk about pushing cases out of the criminal justice system, you know, in Brooklyn, we started to push out a lot of the low-level possession of marijuana cases. I've also indicated today, and so did DA Cy Vance, that we're going to be looking not to prosecute turnstile cases anymore.
I appreciate those comments, and I heard what Cy Vance said. I also want to know what's being done about Operation spotlight in which 3 misdemeanors can result in jail time. So we are talking about these low-level offenses. It's sort of like another version of the 3 strikes law, so people are still being penalized.
I'll be clear, I don't support it.
Next up, we're going to have our State Assemblyman Felix Ortiz come up.
Thank you. I also would like to join my colleagues in government to thank the Grito and all of you for coming here tonight. One of the things that I would like to say is that, thank you, almost about 7 years ago, by the way, I know the Hayward family when I first got elected in 1994. That was when the tragedy happened, and that was my welcome to politics. And I am very happy to see you here, and I'm happy to see you that you continue to put the fight, because if without you being an advocate for the issues that you face and so many people facing today, you know, I will tell you this, a lot of people will be out of the hook. And I thank you very much for everything that you have done. And also, I will say this in my personal note, I also would like to thank you for making me part of your family as well. Thank you very much. Okay? Thank you. 7 years ago, we had a very devastating situation where a police officer denied to provide CPR to a young girl, if you remember that, Brianna Ojeda. So the Brianna Ojeda family reached out to me to find out what can we do at the state level. And what I decided to do is to check and look to see what are the things that we can do. And one of the things that we find out that was very interesting is that our police officers, they go for firearm training every year, correct? But then, when more stories came out that police officer was failing on getting CPR, so I introduced a bill on the name of Brianna Ojeda, mandating that every police officer in the city of New York and also in the state of New York will be retrained, will be certified, will be no excuse for them to say we cannot perform CPR in a moment of emergency. So this bill, I would say to you, took us 7 years to get it done in the Assembly. Finally, we passed the bill in the Assembly this year again. The problem was in the Senate. We finally got it done in the Senate this year. Hopefully, we're going to have mandatory CPR for every police officer in the city and the state of New York. I'm hoping that the governor will sign the bill. And I will say this, sometimes when we take legislation like this, raising the age, for example, raising the age, which is a common sense legislation, for me was a common sense legislation. When you have so many other states, when this state happened to be a Republican state, we have a Republican Senate on the other side holding us hostage for not to get that bill done. Definitely, at the end of the day, not only they keep us hostage, but was somebody else who keep us hostage, where we had to stay in Albany for 10 days on the roll in order to give something to the other side, which we denied to give to them, and we got penalized, but we got raising the age done. And things can be done in the state of New York when we put the pressure to the other side, and I mean the Republican as well as the governor, to sit on the table to make sure that they have a very clear understanding that we are no longer going to accept a no, a zero answer from this body, and we're going to act. And the Assembly has taken the leadership on a lot of other measures. For example, the independent inspector, where I was very, very glad to be with the Gunner family in Albany, in front of the governor's office, demanding that we should have an inspector general independent from the governor's office and all the other branches. The problem is when you have an independent prosecutor attached to the governor, usually will go directly to the governor, and that is not the way business should be conducted. We should have an independent body, we should have an individual to make sure that it's accountable, and it's accountable to, we will be accountable to them as well, to make sure we do the job that we need to do. With that, I would like to again thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and the fight continues. God bless you.
So we're going to hear from the public. You know, this is a people's town hall. So,
good evening, everyone. My name is Brooke Cerda Guzman. I'm an undocumented citizen from Guadalajara, Jalisco. I have been in New York City since 1992, and I see how things keep getting worse and worse, but somehow the corporate media continues to paint, you know, a bigger picture, a better picture than it actually is. You know, we say in my country, you know, they keep throwing you a bone so you can, you know, like, oh, you know, things aren't that bad. So don't trust on that. I see every day headlines like this one. This is today's paper from El Diario. I don't know exactly how to translate it, but they are terrifying. If you are undocumented, you may have an idea what it's like every time you hear that. You know, they're closing in. They know where I live because I have a Michelama in Washington Heights for 23 years. So I'm enraged because I see so many people who are not undocumented speaking out for undocumented people all the time. I have seen even Carlos Menchaca, a Mexican American, you know, saying, don't worry, and delaying trainings, you know, your right trainings. What am I gonna do with that when they come for me? You wanna close Rikers and make satellites that we don't even know where they are. Anybody knows the address of the immigration center in Queens? Because I don't. I don't know where I'm gonna end up when they come for me. They keep it top secret because we don't have detention centers here in Manhattan. So I'm gonna be straight out to Elizabeth, New Jersey, and from there I might end up in Arizona, New Mexico, where I'm gonna get raped several times probably, and nobody gives a damn. Nobody. We continue to have people who are not undocumented. And I don't care just because your parents or your grandparents wasn't documented. It's not the same. Nobody cares more than us. And I care for my people. And the war, I see the war is against nationalism. You know, black nationalism, especially. So that is where the war is at. So, I mean, the non-profit industrial complex, I don't see no results. I'm independent. I don't work with nobody. You say this is a coalition of a lot of people. Why don't we do a bail fund for all these black and brown people? They get arrested and sometimes it's only $200. And they stay there risking getting raped, risking a lot of atrocities. We can put on a bail fund right now. We can start a collection to bail them out. There's people that have been there for $20. You know, let's support Akeem brother because he's not a politician. You know, and we don't need politicians no more because they owe a lot of favors already. I don't think I should be rushed because I'm the only transsexual woman in this room. I should be getting more time to speak up. But that's his people, that's his normativity, that's the world that we live in. But that's it. This mic is yours. I'm sure you're gonna say a lot much better things than I have said.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
So just to be clear, we're gonna open it up to any topics from the public. If you'd like to ask a question, we're gonna try to limit most people to 2 minutes, and you can direct it as a comment or as a question to the Brooklyn District Attorney or to the Public Advocate. So for those who want to make a comment or ask questions, you can just start lining up on the side over here. We're just going to go through to any topic.
Good evening. I have a question for each of the elected officials. First for Gonzalez. It's my understanding that City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Rios initiated a movement looking to dismiss warrants for quality of life summonses starting prior to 2007. But recently, the city settled a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit to throw out summonses from the period of 2007 to 2015 for Class C summonses, which are basically quality of life offenses. And I wanted to know if your office was also going to dismiss warrants for those summonses and for the public advocate. I know that you, or at the beginning of the year, it was in the news how the same precincts that have the most amount of quality of life arrests have the least amount of detectives to actually solve crimes. And it was my understanding that you sent a letter to the commissioner, and I wanted to know if the commissioner ever wrote back and what is rationale for having fewer detectives in the precincts with the most crime. Thank you.
So on the issue of warrants, I think it came up a little earlier also, I intend, and with the other DAs, to dismiss all these summons warrants that are 10 years or older. They're going to be dismissed. No one has to actually come to court or to any place to get them dismissed. We're going to be going to court, we're getting the docket numbers, and we're going to be dismissing those cases, and we're going to continue to do that. I've been speaking out on this issue for a long time now, that these summons warrants actually do the opposite of keep us safe, because people have to avoid the police and stay away because they're worried that they're going to get arrested. So we're going to be vacating these warrants over the next few weeks, and we expect hundreds and hundreds of thousands of warrants to be vacated.
Oh, but you said 10 years or older, and I was speaking of...
The other cases already are being dismissed pursuant to the litigation. The ones that you talked about, the civil litigation.
Right.
So those are being dismissed.
Okay, thank you.
With regards to the letter, I did write a letter to the commissioner. The commissioner responded. He indicated to me that he was going to address the disparity, particularly in communities where there were not a lot of detectives. Let me go back to the earlier comment. Listen, if we should have a debate about home ownership of NYCHA, which is really the issue that was raised, which is not the comments that I originally made. We can talk about home ownership, but let's not confuse the two issues. Home ownership obviously is something that some residents support and some oppose, but we can talk about that at some point in time. And two, as the young lady mentioned, if you read the front page of that paper, NYPD is located in all of those, is stationed at all of those locations that were mentioned earlier. But again, the issue was NYPD, which you are focused on this evening, but you can't ignore, as I mentioned, the fact that ICE is real and ICE is out there also.
I'm sorry, you said the commissioner said he's going to address the disparity?
Yeah, he indicated to me that he was going to increase the number of detectives in those districts, in those precincts where they did not have adequate resources.
But did he give you any numbers or anything?
He did, but I don't have the letter in front of me.
Okay, thank you.
I want to thank everybody for their patience while we all sweat in this very hot room, and the Parks Department for providing space. My name is Melissa Ortiz, and I recently attended 2 of the 4 Build the Block sessions that we had in our precinct council, that we had for the 72nd precinct. And not enough residents came out to speak directly to the NYPD. And my understanding for that workshop, or for that open meeting, was the precinct would take ideas and suggestions from the community about ways that we can better work together so that things like this maybe aren't as necessary as they are now. Unfortunately, I was told by our inspector, Rodriguez, that it wasn't formally requested that there would be a report back to the community. And I'm coming to the public advocate and our district attorney to specifically request that a report be given back to the community about the findings that were had at those meetings, because otherwise all it turned into was residents complaining about crime and what's going on in the community, with no resolutions. And that's what we need in our community. We need answers, not more complaints. There are complaints left and right. We can play ping pong all day, but I really want to see opportunities for resolution. So I brought to you my notes from the meeting, and I would love to be able to follow up directly with your office and hear back.
As was mentioned earlier, we do too many town hall meetings. We need some recommendations and we need an action plan. Thank you.
So I wanted to say thank you for having me here today. I came and I knew that there would be a lot of concern and there would be a lot of criticism of what was happening in the criminal justice system. But I'm here to listen. I'm going to follow up on that case that the young lady mentioned about the $1,000 bail, because those are the kind of things that I really care about. I care about reforming the criminal justice system. I care about making sure that Brooklyn is safe for all of us to raise our families. And I appreciate the people who came out and spoke, and even the people who were very critical of things that are happening in my office. I paid attention, and I encourage all of you to continue to feel free to reach out to me. I'm not running away from the community. I'll be in the community, and I hope to have this dialogue. I think it's important that we have this, and I hope you appreciate that when I came here today, I understood that there would be a lot of anger and concern, but in the short time that I've been the District Attorney of Brooklyn, I've made some progress, and I hope that you start to see it, and I hope that you go onto my, either the DA's website or read some of the literature, because I'm doing things to try to change the system and not focus on broken window cases, but do the things that actually keep us safe. I told Dennis when we spoke earlier, planning this event, I had another event that started at 8, so I have to go. But we could continue talking, and I at least appreciate hearing everyone's concerns. And if there are any issues, I have staff members here, and I can continue to follow up. And I'd like to speak to you about the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for participating. We'll keep on for the next half hour. We're hoping the public advocate will continue to accept some questions.
So let me just say this.
Because there's one thing that you did say that we want to clear up. Yeah. She said that she's tired of coming to town halls where not enough solutions are being offered.
No, what I said.
This is what we got to make clear, because many of us, we've been offering solutions about how to end broken windows. And if you continue to sit here and engage us, we have a lot more. We can present that to you. And
no, that's not what I said.
So please.
I was responding to the young lady who indicated that she went to a meeting, or meetings, and that there was no report. And so as a result of her recommendation, there should be a report on what we can do to address broken windows and come to some sort of resolution. Now, with regards to the recommendations that you have presented, some of those, obviously, she should take into consideration. But what she was specifically talking about was the 4 town hall meetings that she attended where no one got back to her. That's what I was responding to. Thank you so much. So I will take is any other questions from the public? Thank you.
And also, I just want to announce in a few moments, we're also going to be passing around some cards that specifically ask you guys for your experiences and your solutions towards ending broken windows. If you haven't had a chance to speak, we're going to be passing those cards around in a minute. We'll collect those at the end of the night as well if you haven't had a chance to. Because on our website, The People's Agenda, where these are community-based solutions, we are doing these town halls to absorb more ideas from the community, and so we want to hear your feedback so we can continue to add to this document as well. So let's continue.
Good afternoon, my name is Vincent Riggins, and I want to congratulate Reno Sunset Park for putting together this awesome event. I am from East New York, Brooklyn. I'm also a proud member of the Organization Against Broken Windows, and we've been fighting this fight stringently for 2015, but strongly in 2015. So my question is, I'm also the architect, along with members of the Organization Against Broken Windows, of the resolution that we submitted to the City Council, OPJ, the Mayor, DA's office, every stakeholder against broken windows, stop, search, and frisk. That was in October 2015. So my brief question is, was you in office in October 2015? That's my question. The other thing centers around, you use the phraseology game. Use the phraseology game. We do not consider our children to be gang members. All right? They're in an environment where they're trying to survive. They don't have the resources, so they all have been manipulated mentally to act the way they're doing. And organizations that broken windows, El Grito is looking for solutions to that. The third thing, in my organization, which is Bright Leadership Coalition, Bright, spelled B-R-I-T-E, it's a synonym for better relationships in the East New York. That's my organization. We don't talk about affordable housing. We talk about sustainable housing. That's a big difference. If you change the narrative of what the mayor, Bloomberg, and the resident were using, you could possibly win the fight. It is impossible to obtain affordable housing because nobody knows what that means, except the developers. My second question, do you know where the most successful form of MIH, sustainable housing, is in the whole country? East New York, Brooklyn. It's called Starlight City and the Nehemiah Homeowners Program. There is a model for them to follow if they were serious about providing sustainable housing. That's why they want to use the word sustainable, because it's not about sustainable, it's about affordable, and for affordable is transition. See, but they had the whole city tricked, and they still got us tricked by trying to fight that narrative. You cannot use the narrative of the enemy and think you're going to win the war. Sustainable housing. So there's a model that's already been in existence for over 30, 40 years to provide suitable, sustainable housing for middle-income families, and they won't use it. Why? Because we haven't done our homework. It's on the books. You can research it. It ain't gonna take you long. And Starlight City is in a fight right now for some other things. Starlight City has its own police force. We've got its own sustainable shopping centers. You got every level of income in there. You got small mom and pop business owners. You got civil service, police, sanitation, fire, everything. So that is the model. And then the Nehemiah Homeowner Program is what's going to allow you to maintain your community. So 2 questions.
Excellent. You're absolutely right. Nehemiah was absolutely created. It was created by Reverend Youngblood, as you know, Northeast Congregations. And I know the organization, you're absolutely right. Nehemiah is sustainable housing, and language is important, and that should be the model going forward. It was built on state land. It was once a dump, as you know, and that's the model that we should move forward on, and I agree with you totally. And I hope to see you tomorrow at Reverend Youngblood's 60th birthday at Mount Pisgah Church. Very good. He's a great visionary.
I actually had a question for the district attorney, Eric Gonzalez, but you're the public advocate. As the public advocate, you also have the ability to actually investigate city agencies. They happen to be the district attorney's office also happens to be a city agency. They have recently opened up a cold case unit of innocent victims who have been killed or whatever. My son's case is a cold case. Chantel Davis' case is a cold case. There are over 100 cold cases of innocent victims who were murdered by the police. And a lot of these murders happening under Charles Hines. And like I said, Ken Thompson had already pulled the cover off of Charles Hines. And many of us already know the corruption that was going on in Charles Hines' office for decades. Many of the parents on this fly here, I advocate for, we go out, we protest. I've been doing this for over 23 years. These are innocent victims and we must know the truth. Ken Thompson's office supposedly
Sunset Park, Sunset,
excuse
me, Mr. Haywood.
My son's
Mr.
case
Haywood,
for-
so sorry. No, you're gonna continue. Please, Sunset Park, let's respect the speaker because I'm hearing all of you louder than I can hear Mr. Haywood Sr. So if you're still in the building with us to experience this event, please be respectful. Thank you. Continue, Mr. Haywood Sr.
Okay, just real quick anyway, I just want to show the community and the advocate the corruption that continues to exist in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. They claim to have reinvestigated my son's case. Now, mind you also, Charles Hines labeled this case as a tragic accident. Things happen in a split second, lighting dim. Charles Hines also, when he closed the case, he had a press conference, and instead of him showing the public the plastic toy guns that the children were playing with, which didn't look close to a real weapon, he went out and got realistic looking toy guns to show the public to justify the murder of my son. This is something that Charles Hines was doing in many other cases. But Ken Thompson, they call themselves doing an investigation, which they never, which is the investigation which they gave me. Blank sheets of paper. I presented all the evidence, all the information that they needed to convict this officer. They also refused to show the plastic toy gun that my son was holding and dropped, which didn't look anything close to a real weapon. They still continue to show the toy gun in black and white. Oh, and another thing, this is I'll tell you this, when I was called into the DA's office, everything's, like I said, Ken Thompson had passed on, so Eric Gonzalez and some of the other ADAs who call themselves representing the public. And like I tell you, they do not. They said they had an NYPD report or crime scene report, and they showed me some clothing that they claiming belonged to my son. None of the clothing they showed me belonged to my son. But they used this to justify and close the case. Fabricated lies, fabricated evidence. How is that acceptable? How do we accept that? And how do we have faith and trust in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office? And like I said, as a public advocate, you have to, when I bumped into you and Eric on the Puerto Rican Day Parade, this is what I was asked. I would really like to meet with you. I wanted to meet with him also. He said he would call me, he never called me, but your office did. I really would like to meet with you so I can actually show and prove to you also the corruption within this institution.
As we wrap up again, if you have any last comments, questions, concerns, just line up on the side. And then,
good evening, everyone. Oh, wow. Hi, my name's Joel. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Thanks. Awesome. I'm actually going to be addressing y'all tonight. I don't really have any questions for politicians. I basically know where they stand, even when they, where they say they stand, I know where they actually stand, which is cool. But first of all, I just want to say first and foremost that if you have been a victim of broken windows policing, or if you're within 1 degree of separation from somebody who's been a victim of broken windows policing, you have my utmost solidarity, and nobody should have to go through that shit. I just want to throw that out there right now. I'm sorry for my language. I also want to talk a little bit, I don't know, there might be 1 or 2 people that, in the room that might not know, like, the theory, like, the overall strategy of broken windows policing, but it's really interesting. It's basically the idea that if you enforce low-level crimes, well, what they call crimes, then it will prevent the commission of larger ones. So the logic behind this is basically the squeegee guy or the subway dancer who's 16 years old and the woman selling churros is somehow responsible for when a rich Wall Street executive bashes his wife's head in on the Upper West Side. So that's the logic behind broken windows theory. So in addition to that, I want to talk about the fact that broken windows actually doesn't work. There was, the NYPD actually had a report 2 years ago. They collaborated with the Department of Investigations, and it was the NYPD Inspector General's report actually had a report with statistics and everything, and graphs and all that pretty stuff, and it basically said that, oh yeah, enforcing low-level crimes doesn't actually change like the commission of felony crimes. There was no, like not really that much of a fluctuation at all, really. And so it doesn't work. And you would think that after something doesn't work, they would stop doing it. But no, they're not doing it. So the overall strategy of broken windows, we need to just call it what it is. And it is what it is a omnipresent counterinsurgency campaign. It is about containment. It is about nothing more than containment. It is about nothing more than doing basically what the police doing here, what U.S. soldiers do in Iraq and Afghanistan to people who they are currently trying to control, the populations that they're trying to control. That's what broken windows theory is. That's what this whole thing is about. It's not about keeping us safe. It's not about any of that nonsense. So get that out of your head that, oh, look, we decreased crime because of broken windows. Crime was actually already on the decline when this whole thing was being implemented, when this whole thing was being discussed and implemented. This is about containment, this is about control, and this is about criminalizing black and brown people in this city. That's really, and the reason why they do it, well, first of all, there is financial incentive to criminalize poor black and brown people in this country. 1. 2, there is a subconscious fear of revolt by the people who they're exploiting. This has been the story of this country since its inception. Okay? And, yeah, that's basically what this is about. Oh, so they're doing this thing now. It's basically more called community policing, whereby rather than just going through SWAT teams and this and that, the police will collaborate with, some local nonprofits and self-proclaimed community advocates, politicians and whatever, and they'll basically, come through and, they gives themselves like the guise of serving the community or this and that, when what they're actually doing is continuing to criminalize our youth, putting kids in these little databases like Comstat that the NYPD uses, and mapping out social networks and trying to find ways to further put people into this mass incarceration system, which is profitable for them. So that's what this is about. I just want to get that off your chest because we're going to hear a lot of things tonight from a lot of different people talking about how, this is about safety and whatever. Nobody should apologize first and foremost for hating the police, for disrupting politicians, okay, or not disrupting politicians, for distrusting politicians, because we've heard the same thing year after year, generation after generation, and we should not have to ask for them to stop harassing us if we're getting from point A to point B. We should not have to ask for them, but we keep having to do it. So, I'm going to invite people. First of all, politicians aren't going to change this. They're not going to do it, they don't care. They act as the intermediaries between capital and us, and then the state enforces them. That's their purpose, that's their design. That's why I don't ask, I don't care what their positions are, whatever. So, if you want to organize with the people, because we're the ones that change things. The people make the history, not the politicians. We're going to DC on September 16th and 17th. We're going to have our own People's Congress, rather than depending on their councils and their legislative bodies. We're going to talk about organizing our own. Washington, DC, September 16th, 17th, Howard University. Hope you're there. Come talk to us afterwards if you're interested in more information.
Hello, how's it going? My name is Raul Sapi. I'm a grant recipient from the National Science Foundation in order to do research. I'm a college student at Binghamton University. I was born and raised in Sunset Park on 41st Street. A few years ago, my grandmother died and our apartment was brought out for a large lump sum, which often ended up not paying off because now when I came back, I have to pay rent in communities that I know I can't afford anymore. Something that I really wanted to contribute, I chose to do my research on Sunset Park because of everything that's happening here. But something that's important is the history of policing. Police originate from slave patrols, even with their shields. The history of policing comes from people that were escaping the status of being property. They were chasing us for our freedom, and it still continues till today. We can see it from the shields. Originally, police in New York City used to walk around with batons. They were gangs that were deputized on behalf of the city in order to create some sort of order in different spaces. So my general thoughts are that Sunset Park is going through all of this violence, and what I need and what I want for the community and what I'm asking is that we have more community participation in what happens. There have been several organizations, such as the Brownsville Youth Court. I was one of the original members of the Brownsville Youth Court. And crimes such as assault, which are often not categorized as broken windows crimes, are crimes that can be resolved through places such as youth courts. So what I would like for you to do and what I would ask is, are you willing to advocate on the behalf of Sunset Park for a community youth court in order to prevent assault cases from going to the district attorney's office?
I've supported youth courts for a long time, the one in Red Hook, the one in Midtown, and the one in Brownsville that we're trying to put in place. I've been in the forefront of that, and actually I've practiced there quite a bit. And a number of crimes, offenses should be diverted over to youth court so that we can do mediation and get them out of the criminal justice system. Been in the forefront of that for a long time as a former legal aid attorney.
My question was, I understand that. My question was specific.
And in Sunset Park.
In Sunset Park, will you be able to support the youth court?
Yeah, we should expand it to Sunset Park and other communities all throughout the city of New York.
And what timeline do you think?
It all depends upon funding, and obviously we need city council and we need the mayor of the city of New York to support an initiative.
So what can the community do to aid you in doing that?
Obviously it needs to be part of your agenda going forward, and I support it.
Get a new mayor.
Thank you.
That's in your hands.
And also, as I know everybody's getting hot, if you also have any announcements to make before the conclusion of the meeting, just line up over here as well.
Just a few quick questions. Earlier you spoke about police going after gangs as an effective policing strategy. Now I wanted to ask, given that the NYPD has 28,000 people on its gang database list, and that one can be put on that list for as little as a Facebook post, a tattoo, or hanging out in a certain neighborhood, how is that any different than broken windows policing when it comes to harassing the black and brown communities of New York City? And furthermore, I would like to ask the district attorney in absentia, perhaps you can answer. Is there a case in Brooklyn where a non-police officer has killed someone under similar circumstances to those under which Peter Liang killed Akai Gurley, and for which the district attorney recommended a comparable sentence? Is there a single case of that? I would very much like to know.
I can't answer that question. That's a question for the district attorney, obviously. But in regards to the question related to gangs and my comments earlier, I really want to focus on violence, not the crimes that you just mentioned. And there should not be a database where individuals who engage in Facebook are on that list. I'm talking about violent individuals who unfortunately wreak havoc in communities all throughout the city of New York.
I'm not sure most of us here have faith in NYPD to handle that database.
That's pretty obvious.
I'd just like to make one last announcement that we have some flyers in the back. July 13th, 6:30 p.m., Flatbush and Nostrand. There will be a march for Sandra Bland. Hope to see you all there. Last year we had an enormous march on Church Ave and down Flatbush, and I'd really love to see you all there.
Say her name. And I would hope that all of you will march for that individual. The crime remains unresolved. It was an individual who was gay and black, whose body was cut up in pieces at Nostrand Avenue. And as I look around the room, I didn't see not one individual there. And this is the elected official that stood out there and was responsible for, again, representing the LGBTQ community of Bedford-Stuyvesant. And so I urge all of you to join me in seeking justice for that young man whose body was cut up and thrown on the subway station at Nostrand Avenue and Fulton Street. Thank you.
Real quick, y'all, just to answer the question. You know what case comes to mind? Marcel Dockery. Marcel Dockery. He was given 22 years in prison for the same conviction as Peter Liang. He was alleged to have lit a mattress on fire in the hallway in Coney Island. And as a result, an officer died, an NYPD officer died in the building. So that was the same charge, indirect. And that same judge, because wasn't it the same judge? Yes. It was the same judge. See, we do our homework in
So again, we're dealing with a racist system. I'm surprised that word hasn't come up earlier in the evening. So that's your parallel. So there seems to be a problem within the Brooklyn DA's office. And I remember the other question was, were you in office in 2015? I think the answer is yes, right? Yeah. That's public advocate is not in that specifically. But that's the parallel case. Marcel Dockery. He's a political prisoner. He's a political prisoner. Marcel Dockery. Because if Peter Leanne could walk around with an ankle bracelet for 4 months after murdering somebody, and Marcel Dockery has to do 21 years in prison, he's a political prisoner. So Brooklyn, gather yourselves up and organize against this system. Sir, please, you're up next. Thank you.
My name is Eric. I am a retired transit worker, still a member of the Transport Workers Union Local 100. Yesterday, a number of us showed up in the court in Center Street on Manhattan to show solidarity with a union brother of ours, Darrell Goodwin, who had been unjustly arrested, pulled out of his token booth at 59th Street and Columbus Circle Station about 2 months ago by a cop, a white cop. Darrell Goodwin is a black co-worker, the cop was white, allegedly because the cop said he was chasing a shoplifter onto the platform, and Brother Goodwin did not open the slam gate fast enough for this police lieutenant's pleasure. This is all nonsense. Every policeman has the key to the system. They do not need anybody to open the slam gates. A number of us went to the courtroom to show solidarity with Brother Goodwin. When he came in, 40 of us stood up to show our solidarity. The court officers went kind of crazy, yelling and screaming, "Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down." Imagine if it had been not just 40 transit workers, but if 34,000 transit workers, which is the number in Local 100 that work for New York City Transit alone, if we came together against broken windows policing, in support of movements such as Black Lives Matter, because Transport Workers Union Local 100 is, in its vast majority, a union of workers of color. And further, because they've been doing a lot of hiring recently, it is a rather young union. This is an organization of very many young black workers that could bring the city to a halt in 2 minutes. This is the potential power we have. However, they use racism. The ruling class uses racism. The misleaders of the union, I have to say, give in to the racism and hobnob with cops and set the members against fare beaters, for example, the very people with whom we should be showing solidarity as fellow members of the working class, try to get from point A to point B. It is necessary, I think, for all workers and supporters of the workers' movement to do as myself and other people in Revolutionary Transit Worker have been doing for a while, to bring pressure on the union leaders to side with our friends and our comrades, our fellow workers, and not with the cops. Cops are not workers, and their so-called unions are not unions, but organizations of bargain. Some people might get the idea, well, the Transport Workers Union, it belongs to the transit workers, let me, keep my distance, whatever. I urge you, if you are ever dissatisfied with the way the leadership of my union is acting, let them know, because a real union should be a union of the whole working class and not merely of its own immediate members. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
know everyone's hot, so we're just going to close out with some final announcements.
Those are supposed to say last but not least. Right. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Ganji. I'm a candidate for mayor in the Democratic primary, challenging Bill de Blasio. I voted for de Blasio in 2013, but he has failed miserably to follow through his pledges to address social and racial and economic inequities. So our campaign promotes social and racial and economic justice across a range of issues: public schools, public housing, homelessness, affordable housing, public transportation. A central component of our agenda is to end abusive and discriminatory policing. A central component of our agenda is to end quota-driven broken windows policing. On day one, if I'm elected mayor, I will direct the police commissioner of New York City to take these steps. One is to dismiss all the officers involved in the death of Eric Garner, not only threw him to the ground unnecessarily and engaged in excessive force and reckless violence, ignored 11 times Eric Garner saying, "I cannot breathe." None of those people should be on the NYPD payroll. As you guys know, they all are. So here's the optic. Eric Garner is dead. The man who shot the video is in prison, and all the officers responsible for the death of Eric Garner are still on the NYPD payroll, paid by yours and mine tax dollars. I will also direct the NYPD commissioner to end the quota system and to end the use and the application of broken windows policing. We're not going to suggest that you tweak it. We're not going to suggest that you give cops more training. We're not going to suggest that you use body cameras to stop it. We're going to say end it. And the way we're going to enforce it is I, or my surrogates, could appoint any one of you people to be my surrogate as mayor, go to the arraignment parts in the major boroughs. As you guys may know, the importance of the centrality of arraignment parts, everybody gets arrested, gets arraigned. So the first day I'm in office, I will announce the end of broken windows policing. I will give the NYPD, let's say, 2 or 3 days to follow through on that directive. So on January 4th, let's say, we'll start to go to the arraignment parts. Let's say we go to the arraignment part in Brooklyn, and we find that somebody was arrested because they were carrying an open alcohol container, or somebody was arrested because they were walking between 2 subway cars, or because they had a foot up in a subway seat, or they tried to jump a turnstile, or they were driving with a suspended license, or they were smoking a marijuana cigarette on a park bench. We will find out the name of the police officer who made that arrest, and we will fire that police officer. If the DA asks for bail, we will call out that district attorney. We will say, you don't have to wait for legislation passed in Albany to end cash bail. You can end cash bail because you're the office that requests the bail. If the judge tries to apply bail, we'll call out the judge. And we'll say to the judge the same thing. You don't have to wait for legislation in Albany to end cash bail. You can make a decision not to apply bail because bail is a preventive detention system for poor people. One other step that relates directly to these policies, we pledge to close Rikers Island, not in 100 years, which is what de Blasio has pledged. We pledge to close Rikers Island in year 1. So that's not all about criminal justice program or policing program. That's a lot of it. We have some literature that we can give out to people. Please look out for us. Look out for people gathering petitions. Consider supporting my candidacy, our candidacy, because this city belongs to all of us. It doesn't just belong to the wealthy. It just doesn't belong to well-to-do white people. It belongs to all of us, including the residents of Sunset Park. Thank you. Who's going to be here? Bob Ganji's my name.
Thank you all for coming. And again, we have a statement from Lydia Velasquez. It was an honor and a privilege to be